Well, good morning. Professor Kent Lee here. Welcome to my intermediate writing or intermediate composition class. Today we're going to talk a little bit more about sources and also how to kind of cite the sources. Whenever you use sources, you need to cite them. You have a citation in the text itself, and somewhere you actually have the full reference information, the full information about the source. So let me kind of summarize the use of sources in some of the examples I've provided and maybe provide a few other examples. Then we're going to look more at particular ways of citing sources. So sources. In an assignment like this, your proposal assignment, you're going to use at least a couple of decent English sources. These could be more academic sources, or more likely something for more of a professional quality kind of publication that's something you can understand, but it's still written by some kind of an expert, a business expert, an academic expert, but at a level you can understand. So you're going to cite a source, say in this assignment, in this midterm assignment, to explain maybe about this particular issue or topic, what we know, and what we don't know, or both. If it's more of a research question, what we know about this problem, what we don't know about this problem. If it's more of a business kind of proposal, either the business research or the business partnership, relationship, business agreement kind of proposal, it might be more about what we do know about this kind of problem and what we know about how to address it, how to solve it. Sources to maybe explain then the need, the problem, or the question and such. Probably sources that maybe explain a possible solution. If it's more of a research question and you're coming up with a solution, well, these are sources that maybe indicate where the kind of direction we could look at to it. Or if it's more of a business type proposal, well, here's some sources that talk about a kind of solution for this problem, and let us help you to do it. Unless the sources are providing the rationale, the goals or objectives of your proposal, and also maybe the basis, ultimately the basis or foundation for what you want to do somehow. Whether it's a proposal to maybe look into something and find some new understanding, or it's more like something we kind of know, and it's more like applying it to a new situation or to a new company or to a new environment. It's more about application. So more specifically, sources are going to provide background information about the topic, whether it's academic or more business-like or community service-like background information, sources that explain the problem or analyze the problem or explain the question or explain the need, or talk about the need, particular need that you're addressing. Maybe past problems in terms of understanding this, or past problems in trying to address this problem, this particular problem or issue with the community or with businesses or with academic research. And then kind of maybe explaining or pointing to a possible solution or for some community service or business proposals, showing examples of solutions that have worked in the past, and then say, hey, let us apply those ideas to this situation. So going through some of the examples I created, again, the sample proposal, the Roman military example. Sources are used to provide a little background information about the issue, about the topic, and then especially to show, okay, what we do know. So what you see here, for example, there's a paragraph that explains what we do know about Etruscan military influences on Rome. So these are explained, and then there is a footnote at the end of this list of information. Down here you see a footnote and a footnote number. So this could have gone before. So you could have said, this is what we know, then the footnote number in the text. Or you could have listed, this is what we do know about Roman military influence or Etruscan influence on the Roman military, gladiator games, certain weapons, organization of armies and such. And then you have the footnote citation and then the source information down there. That is used to explain what we do know. And then probably it would be good to cite maybe a well-known history text, and here, and cite that and explain that, well, here's an example of what we don't know. This is, maybe a common or popular text on, Roman history, a scholarly text, and it doesn't really say anything about, well, Etruscan influences on the Roman military tactics or strategy or military policy. It doesn't really talk about that. So that's apparently something that's lacking. This text and that text don't say anything about these kinds of influences, so that's what I want to look at in this research proposal. In the warp drive example, so there's a warp drive example, okay, it's kind of a problematic example. Sources are cited to explain the past research on this problem and the problems that they encountered, and then another source is cited to say, hey, here's a possible solution, or this research paper kind of explores a possible solution, and that's what we want to build on. And so sources are cited there. For the Skynet example, maybe it cites several examples of, say, research on, say, actual research, say, by business scholars or by engineers on how people interact with websites, how people, say, look at websites, and websites that kind of are more effective and why. So there's research out there, and some of it's less technical, something that you could probably find and understand, say, in a business trade journal or in a psychology-oriented trade journal, about how, principles of web design and a visual presentation of information. For example, sources on visual presentation of information and what works for humans. What kind of things work well for humans. That kind of stuff is cited as examples, and maybe a trade journal that talks about, okay, this is our particular approach, this is our particular method. It's described in this article in a business publication. Here, just take a look at it, and this is what we could do for you. So some other examples, let me just give you a few other examples. Community service, let's say, okay, you want to address a problem with literacy, education in a particular community. Well, what's the cause of the problem? Maybe cite a research study, and again, this could be like from an education trade publication, a science magazine, not necessarily a really technical education research study, or it could be a government report. Government sources are good for this kind of stuff. And they'll talk about a particular problem with literacy in this area. You could cite that kind of stuff. Or sources that talk about literacy programs, a particular literacy program for maybe a particular kind of student, particular kind of children, particular age level, a particular kind of literacy that's been done before. Cite that, explain it, and say, hey, this is what we want to kind of adapt and apply to here in this community that we want to help. Health education, for example, let's say, especially obesity education, educating people who have weight problems. People have misconceptions about diet and eating, fat, carbohydrates, or 탄수화물, carbohydrates, carbs. People have misconceptions about this. Maybe you can cite some more health-oriented trade journals, or science news and science magazines, stuff that's not terribly technical, that you can understand, that explain these common misconceptions that people have about diet and eating and carbs and fat, or sources that talk about a particular obesity problem or particular overweight problem with a particular group or population, let's say men over 65 or middle-aged people or something like that. Or sources that talk about particular health education programs that have been done somewhere else for a different kind of group, different kinds of people, and say, this is kind of what we want to adapt and apply to here, and this is how we're going to kind of change it and adapt it for, say, middle-aged people in the community here in this city. Racial stereotypes, again, you can find psychology research, maybe kind of more stuff like psychology news sources that talk about racial stereotypes. Oh, here's one. Here's a trade journal, kind of in psychology. I just got this in my mailbox yesterday. It's about combating racial stereotypes. And this is something that's kind of written by psychologists about current research about racial stereotypes in psychology. And this is something that would be written for people in education fields and companies and administration and such stuff. If you're interested, it's a trade publication called The Observer, and it's published by the American, the Association for Psychological Science. I'm sure you can find that online. Say you're interested in proposing a new online service. Okay, maybe, again, research or stuff in science news magazines or psychology trade publications about, say, what kind of works for visual display of information, or what are problems and frustrations that people have with, say, their email systems, and say, hey, we're going to propose, like a business research proposal, we're going to propose a new email service and a redesigned email service that really changes how email is done, and it makes it just better and easier to use and more effective for normal humans who are busy. Or it could be more of a business proposal, like, hey, we're a new email company. We have this great new email interface, this new email system. Let us explain why it's better, and let us offer you our email services, and this is how much it costs if your company wants to use our email service. Let's say you want to create a new app for improving people's body image. Okay, that's a real need. Again, research on body image problems, misconceptions that people have about body image or about being overweight. You know, people have all kinds of misconceptions like, oh, if you're fat, you're just lazy or you have problems. Well, that's not exactly true. It's a lot more complicated than that. So maybe some kind of a phone app to help people with body image problems or weight issues. New engineering material. Here's more of a sciencey one. Oh, here's an idea I had. Let's say, our building construction and road construction and all depends on concrete, and one important ingredient in concrete is sand. And it's actually a certain quality, certain type of sand that's really suitable for making concrete, not just any sand. But we're actually kind of running low on building quality, building grade sand. So let's say I have some engineering idea for, I don't know, making a new sort of synthetic sand from some recycled materials. Great way to use recyclable products that are otherwise hard to recycle. I have this great idea. We cite some science sources that explain how this would work for like a new company, a new business, or a new science research project to develop a sort of synthetic sand for building materials. Let's say employee motivation. It could be, I'm going to research employee motivation and come up with a new way of helping employee motivation at certain companies. Or I'm a coaching company, a coaching service, and we're really experts at improving employee motivation. Let me explain why. Here's the research on employee motivation, and here's how we can help you. Maybe research about employee motivation and misconceptions about motivation, misconceptions about workplace relationships, and sources about, well, things that actually work for improving that, or research about a particular approach for improving motivation, or a particular approach for maybe business coaching, for coaching managers, executives, employees. Here's kind of a new coaching technique, a coaching model that our coaching company specializes in. And here's research showing how it works and why it works. And let us come to your company and talk to your employees and fix things at your company. So, for citing sources, there are particular ways of citing sources. So within the text, you need to actually cite the source. And then somewhere, you actually need full information about the source. So when you have a citation in the text, that's a citation. You cite the source. That's a citation. Then somewhere, it's often at the end, but we're going to look at a different way today. Could be at the bottom of a page. You have full information about the source. That's the reference. So we're going to look at a particular method here in this video and the next video for doing that. It's a particular style called the Chicago Manual of Style, particularly the long footnote style. Now, for this assignment, you can use whatever system you like. You don't have to use the Chicago system. If you are used to MLA, maybe you learned that in a literature course, you can use MLA for this assignment. For assignments in my class in general, you can use MLA. If you learned APA, like in a linguistics course, especially linguistics is kind of more data and research focused, that kind of linguistics research or education, language education, you might have learned the APA system. APA is used in social sciences and education and some areas of linguistics. You might have learned a more formal Chicago style, a Chicago system, where you have like author and year in parentheses in the text, and then the full information at the end of the paper in what's called the works cited or in references. You can use that too. That's used in some linguistics fields, some linguistics courses, and in a lot of other humanities courses, like in history. In history, they use the Chicago in-text form or something similar. So I'm mainly going to talk about the Chicago manual, the Chicago system here. You're welcome to use whatever system you like. I'm going to do my best to teach you Chicago. It's confusing because actually there are several different versions of what we call a Chicago manual of style, a Chicago system. I'm first going to present the long footnote style. And probably in the next video I'll present the short footnote style. We have a short footnote at the bottom of the page, and then the full information is at the end of your paper in a separate section called the bibliography or works cited or references. Then there is the in-text citation, where you have in the text parentheses name, year, in the text, the in-text citation, and at the very end of the paper you have the full works cited information. That's the more formal Chicago system. The Chicago in-text citation plus works cited, I'm going to talk about in a later video before your final. I'm going to split this up and talk about that later because that's especially suitable for your final paper. Today, in this video and the next video, I'm going to introduce the long footnote style and then the short footnote style. So this is all confusing, and I'm going to do my best because this is not the system I mainly use when I write my own papers, but I'll do my best. So let me give you a little introduction to the Chicago footnote style. So if you see here in the example that I wrote about, Roman military proposal, you see a footnote right about there. Try to highlight this on the screen for you. There's the footnote. So it's clear from the context that the information right before this, like this whole long sentence, is what this citation is referring to. This little number, it's called superscripted, written above, superscript. Or I could say, here's what we know, then the footnote, superscripted number, and then blah, 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 blah. As long as it's clear what the citation goes with. The citation could be right before the information that I'm pulling from the source. It could be after the information I've pulled from a source, as long as it's clear in the context how I'm doing it. And then at the bottom of the page, here we have the long footnote. So the long footnote style puts all of the information, the full reference about the source, in the footnote at the bottom of the page. So that's a lot of information. So this is probably ideal for maybe shorter papers, shorter essays, especially when you're citing each source once, or maybe twice at most or such. Because otherwise there's a lot of copying and pasting and stuff. So this works for maybe shorter papers where you don't need to cite a source a lot of times. It can be convenient for that. So at the bottom of the page, I've got, this is in sort of Chicago format here. I've got the author. Now, some people do it like this, where I've got, for the first author, I've got the author's last name first or family name first. Although that's not necessarily what's always done in the Chicago style. I'll go through more in detail later on. I'll go step by step through Chicago footnote style, long footnote style for different kinds of sources. So I just want to show you what it looks like. Authors. You got the authors, comma, the title of the book. So this is a book. The title of the book, it's in italics. And then in parentheses, I've got the location where it was published. So whenever you cite books, whether Chicago or another system, you usually include where the book was published. And if you look in Cite a Book on where the copyright information is, you can find it there. Location, London. The name of the publisher, Osprey Publishing, comma, 1995, the year. Then the closing parenthesis, period. So that is the full bibliography style, the full long footnote style for a book. Okay, so that is a book. Author, title of book, and then in parentheses, location, name of publisher, year. Okay, so that's how you would cite a book. Next we have, let me show you another book here. Here we have Livy. I'll just show you the citation here. Livy is an ancient Roman historian, so there's no you don't need to put the first and last name because that's he just has one name. He's an ancient Roman historian. It's like Aristotle and Plato and such. The title of the book, in parentheses, of course, it's published in, the translation or the edition is published in London, Bristol Classical Press, 1991. Then after that, you see that 1.8, and that's like this, a section and subsection number of the book, like a chapter and section number of the book. So that means the information came from that particular section and chapter of this book. So if your information came from particular pages in a book, it's helpful to put that in your long footnote in Chicago style. Next we have another book, this Henkin book. It's another history book, New York, Prager Press, 1971. Okay, next we have what is actually an article from a scholarly or professional journal. Jack Snyder, the title of the article, One World, Rival Theories, comma, Foreign Policy. Foreign Policy is the name of the magazine or an academic journal or professional journal. 145, that's probably a volume number. So like all the publications in 1 year of a magazine or newspaper journal, that's a volume. Then the issue, then the date. The date is in parentheses, and then 52, that's from page 52 of this article. So you do that in Chicago, you put the page number if information is from a particular page number. If it's especially from a particular page in a book or in an article. So that is what the long footnote style looks like. Now, instead of putting these at the bottom of the page, I could have like the numbers, the footnote numbers, but instead of putting it as a footnote at the bottom of the page, I could just as well put them all at the end. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the order that they were cited in the document. Instead of putting them at the footer or bottom of the page, I could put them all at the end of the document, and it would be a section called Endnotes, and it would be in the very same style that you saw here. So in the next video, I'm going to go I'm going to go through the long footnote style in a little more detail for different kinds of sources. And then I'm going to talk about the short footnote style. If you want to do endnotes, that's fine. It's basically the long footnote style, but instead of at the bottom of the page, it's all at the end of the document. You've got a little section that says endnotes, and you've got your endnotes. They are basically the same as footnotes, but they're at the end in a section called endnotes. Footnotes are at the bottom of each page where it's cited. Endnotes are just all at the end of the document. Doesn't matter to me. I don't care which one you use, whichever you prefer. You may have seen endnotes and say maybe when a scholar writes a book and they might have endnotes, and it's kind of annoying because they have to flip to the end of the book and see, oh, where's the source from? I find that annoying. But for a shorter essay, endnotes are quite okay. But the format is exactly the same. Like when you have like a book, you know, the author, title of the book, parentheses, location, publisher, year, close parentheses. For any kind of journal, magazine, newspaper, you have the author first, if there's an author. If there's no author, just, you know, leave it out in the title of the article. So author, if you have an author. If you don't know who the author is, maybe it's anonymous, there's no author, that's fine. Next thing is the title. So if there's no author, the title, and then the name of the publication, the name of the magazine or newspaper or journal, and maybe the issue or volume number, the date it was published, and period. So the format for endnotes and long footnotes is exactly the same in terms of the types of things and the order in which they appear and all that. All right, this is not exciting stuff, I know. So in the next video, we're going to talk more about, in detail, the long footnote format and then the short footnote format. Later on this semester, toward the end of the semester, I'll talk about the more formal in-text citation, author year citation style later on. Again, for papers in my class, I don't care which system you use. Long footnote, short footnote, Chicago parenthetical in-text citation style, or APA or MLA or some other system that you're used to. If you've been taking engineering or chemistry classes and you've learned a different style there, you can use it in papers in my class. That's fine. I don't care, because I'm used to a lot of different styles. Okay, I'll also provide you links to a couple of guides for Chicago style. If you learn one of these, if you learn Chicago, it's fairly easy to learn another style, another system. They're somewhat similar. So I don't care, learn one, and if you have to learn another one, it's fairly easy. Once you've learned one, you can learn another one. All right, next video, more boring details about Chicago style. Okay, see you then. Bye.